life and confidence coach Dianna Leeder, and this is my podcast, the Crave More Life Roadshow. It's here we talk about emotional hits and lovingly kicking our own asses to get through them. Just so you know, it always comes down to being your beautiful, sassy self, living and loving from you, no matter what. So join me to hear about the healing journeys of other women, and you just might become a DIY ass kicker too. Hey DIY ass kickers, welcome back to the Roadshow. My guest today is Hawaiian healer, mentor, and teacher with family roots going back over 20 generations in Hawaii, James Kawainui. You'll find James's full bio and contact information in the show notes. And I also want to say that I'm super honored to announce that James is an author in the upcoming Find Your Voice, Save Your Life 4, the Transcendent Men edition. So he'll be back on the Roadshow again to talk about what the heck a transcendent man is, and the potential of this book to actually support men who want to grow and be more. But today we're talking about stress, that old thing that's going to get you. It's going to get you. We all experience it, and many of us think it's a normal part of our life, but truly we can live outside of that social and personal expectation into something that's way more fulfilling for us. So let's get to it. Welcome to the Roadshow, James.
Good morning, Diana. Thank you so much for having me. That sounds like a mouthful when you start talking about all the things that we are and what we do every day, you know. So, but I think in the end of the day, it's being available to people that are looking for and wanting help and transformation in their life, you know.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and it's hard to, I think, because there, you know, you have as the example, you have so much that you offer. It's you know, you need to make sure that people know all those things. I mean, I love to read about, you know, guests and what they do, because, you know, the general public maybe doesn't know that about you. And, you know, the one piece I have to ask first and foremost is that you talked about, you gave me that description that you are a spiritual strategist. So I would love you to explain some of that. You know, I'm not sure whether everybody will get that, probably some, but maybe some won't. So I just want to hear you describe that. I love that title.
I think I saw the spiritual strategist as somebody that's helping people that want to create transformation in their life. You know, we get to certain places in our life and there are things that we are successful at. There might be material success, there might be financial success. And then what I find for people, I would say maybe in our age group, right? So people from 45 to 65 or so, is that we get to a point that we realize that there's more to life than what we've lived. And so the spiritual strategist is somebody that comes in and says, yes, there's this there's this other part that we haven't looked at. This, how do I reckon myself with the world? How do I find my spiritual center? Because I think everything starts from that spiritual center. So as a strategist is helping people find that place, or just at least understand where they are, and then how they want to move forward. So go ahead.
I love that. It's and I think that's really accurate. I think that that is a place that we come to. I guess with age, I don't know. I never believed that for a long time. I used to think, nah, these people that say it's cool to be old and it's, you know, it's, you just kind of sail through and it's not such a big deal. I just think, nah, they're just making that up. But now that I'm there, it is. It's very, very accurate. Yeah.
You know, part of it is also, I think we get to a certain point in our life and we look and we go back and there's this sort of a review, and in the review, we're looking at the places, or maybe some people would say the regrets of choices and chances not taken, right? And the other part I think that we come to as well is what's the legacy? What do we want to leave behind? It's not that what do we want people to remember us for? I don't think that has anything to do with it, but do we want to move through the rest of our life knowing that we made a contribution, not only to ourselves, but to the people around us, and as much as possible to the wider world, right?
Yeah. 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 And maybe we just have more time to think about that now.
I I I think we give ourselves more space to reflect,
Yeah.
and I think it's the reflection. It was a place where I realized, years ago, that I didn't want the regrets. I didn't want to have to say, I wish I had done that. Not that I go out and I'm this daredevil that tries everything, because there's still these places that I would say hold myself back, but giving myself more room to explore those
Mm.
options, you know.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, I do know for sure. And I know for me, it's been both, outer things that, oh, geez, I really wanted to take a hike in this particular park or whatever.
Right.
Um, but it's inside, it's stuff inside too that we want to explore or get to or understand that, yeah, it's really both, isn't it?
It is, and it's that balance that we look for. And I think, in relationship to stress, which is what we wanted to talk about today, it's that not being in balance that stress causes, or is the result of the stress that we're in.
Yeah.
And and I would say that I don't know anybody that doesn't have some kind of stress in their life. I, I think to say that you don't have stress would be, for me, a bit of a fallacy, because there's
Mm-hmm.
always things that are happening, and it's how we learn how to cope with or deal with what shows up in our life that determines, I guess, the quality, but also our state of mind.
Right, right. Which leads me into that question is, why are we so stressed? And I agree. I think that we need a bit of stress to be able to, almost as a reminder, of being who we really are. So tell us, yeah, why are people so stressed right now? What's different right now?
Well, just to make a comment about what you just said, I think there's healthy stress. So we look at stress as bad, but I think that there's healthy stress. But in relationship to where we are, I mean, my goodness, just think about the last 2.5 years and everything that's happened, and everything that we've been put through as human beings, with um, all the things that happened around the pandemic and COVID and shutting down. And I mean, it feels like in Canada, you guys were more under lockdown than we were in the States, but
Mm-hmm.
still, this place of this sudden loss of freedom. Was there really loss of freedom? Not really, but there was this perceived loss of freedom. And then the stress that was created because of an immediate change in lifestyle that most people were not ready to cope with, and the feeling of isolation and being apart. And then, you know I've been on Zoom for since very beginning of Zoom. I think that was like back in 2015. So like in 2020, when all of a sudden Zoom became the thing and the place to be, I was like, oh yeah, I got it, I'm already there. But this whole thing, I think the benefit of what happened in the last 2 years, even though it was really stressful, is that I would never have met you, for example, and all the people. My world got, instead of it getting smaller and the isolation that came with not being able to go anywhere, my world actually got bigger,
Mm.
because through the interaction of through Zoom and Facebook and everything else like that, I actually met more people. So my community is way more global now than it was 2 years ago. And that's just aside from what we were talking about. But I think part of the thing about stress is how we deal with adversity and what shows up in our life.
Mm-hmm.
on a moment by moment basis, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and not getting caught up in the survival personality or the survival strategy that we built, you know. And everything that happened because of COVID took us back to that survival strategy. And I think most people have a certain, some kind of a survival strategy or survival personality that that was created because of their childhood, you know. And a lot of people that had gone through trauma as a childhood, everything in their childhood or in their life, everything that happened because of the pandemic just exacerbated that
Mm-hmm.
on higher and
Mm-hmm.
higher levels, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that. That, if we're bringing in or carrying some kind of stress or trauma, whether or not we're even aware of it and responding from that place, it's not likely to be a place that's going to be serving for us.
No.
And when we then get smacked with something like COVID, I hadn't really thought about it in those terms, but yeah, I agree. Then we're going to be challenged again from that same place that is not self-serving, right? So
No.
yeah, upping the ante a little bit, I guess.
Yeah, it was watching how the survival part of our DNA kicked in. And that's really what we're talking about, you know, because stress is caused by that survival DNA or that survival strategy kicking in. All of a sudden, we feel like we're in danger. And as soon as we're in danger, then we become vigilant. And we talk about stress as what it happens and the effects that it has, but most people don't realize the effects that it has on the physical form that are long term. Most of our modern illnesses are stress related or stress caused. You know, a lot of things around heart disease, a lot of my personal opinion anyway, but they're caused because our bodies are not operating optimally, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But that's a tongue twister just by itself. But
On a Monday morning.
yeah, because it's not running optimally in that way, it creates deficiencies inside of the body, and those deficiencies have a physical effect long term.
Yeah.
You know, the raised cortisol, the increased heart rate, the blood pressure, the feeling of anxiety and anxiousness, right?
Yeah.
All have creates acids and chemicals in our body that just break down the cellular structure. So stress from that point of view is something that maybe not a lot of people are talking about. And I think in the years to come, the stress from everything that's happened is going to start showing up in different ways too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think it has, the COVID stuff has shown up, certainly from my experience, really clearly already. And I know from my experience with women, it's adrenal fatigue,
Right.
that just total exhaustion where, brain fog, all that stuff that, that we put to, oh, well, I'm getting older. Maybe I just don't know, maybe I can't absorb as much, or, yeah, I'm getting older. I need to just rest a little more. And maybe that's true, on some level, but it's kind of like the peanut butter on the toast. Well, figure out what the toast is first. And I'm not sure why peanut butter and toast came to me, but that's my example. Like without getting to the heart at what the stress is for us, then what's left for us in terms of being able to manage that. So we obviously there is traditional medicine and that kind of thing that we can turn to if that's our thing, but there are other ways of healing that, which you are
the,
very schooled at.
there are other ways of working through our stress. One, I think, for most people is looking at their whatever stress that they're having in their life and actually taking responsibility for it. Instead of blaming the wider world and everything that's happening around me, you realize that we actually have more control over how I say this to people, our lives change when instead of reacting to everything that's happening outside of me, I start to respond.
Yes.
Right?
Love it.
Because every time I react, I literally give part of my energy away to whatever I'm reacting to, right? And if I only have this much, if I only have this much energy in a day and it fills up the jar, and every time something happens, I react, which means I give a little bit away to my jar. Pretty soon, my jar is going to be empty, right? And so not reacting or realizing that I don't have to react to everything that's happening outside of me, but I can actually sit back and go, okay, this is happening here. Do I need to do anything about that? This is happening here. Do I need to put any energy towards that? And becoming really more aware of how and when you give your energy away.
Yeah. Yeah.
That leads to that adrenal fatigue and that feeling of not having anything left at the end of the day because I've given everything away.
Yeah. I think you're right. It's pure energy management.
Mm-hmm. It is energy management. And if there's anything else that we've learned in the last few years, is that if I don't have clear boundaries, that my energy is going to continue to get sapped by the things that are around me. So stress management and energetic boundaries kind of go hand in hand together because one supports the other, right? The more I realize that I don't want to give my energy away, the more I realize that creating these energetic boundaries supports me in being able to move through the world. And that's the way that I look at it, because when I can manage that, it's almost as if I'm moving through the world like this, and everything is moving around me because it's not landing straight in my face anymore because of the awareness, right? And that in itself takes the stress level down.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I agree. Awareness is really that first point, right? That first place that we need to go. And even if it's just, a quick 2 minutes to contemplate what's happening, we can do that, and we can take some ownership for our response, right? Which we don't normally do. If someone calls and says, "Oh my gosh, this is going on, I need you to do blah 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 blah," and, "Oh yep, I'm right on it." Yeah, no, just give ourselves time, right?
There's not even a place where we think that. This is what I tell people now. It may sound really simplistic, I said, but if you're going through your day and you're starting to feel overwhelmed, I said, what happens if all you do is you grab the remote and you hit pause? Because if you look at your life like you're a movie, and there's a place where you actually, it's the cool thing about having movies online now, right? So, when you went to the movies before, you'd have to go to the bathroom and you'd miss whatever was happening. But now you can hit pause and go, hey, I'm going to go grab something to drink and I'm going to use the bathroom real quick. And so what happens if you did that with your life, right? So if there was this place where you just hit that pause button, even if it was for 10 or 15 seconds, and just go, wait a minute, I need to take a step back here. I can feel myself starting to lose control. And when I hit that pause button, I don't have to go anywhere. I can sit where I'm at. I can still be at my computer. I could still be having this conversation with somebody. I could still be driving my car, right? But when I hit that pause button, what I'm doing is I'm pulling my mind back from wherever it is that it went. And I'm saying, wait a minute, let me just take a breath here. And that's literally what we're talking about. Let me take a breath here and realize that it's not just my mind, but I'm James in the body sitting in his chair talking to Dianna in this moment. And my room is around me. All of those things disappear when we are caught inside of our stress, because all we see is whatever it is of that issue that's in front of us in that moment.
Yeah. That's a really great description, James. Yeah, I like that. Just that hit pause.
Pause. It's just the pause button. Take a breath, come back inside yourself as best as you can and say, okay, what do I need to do in this moment, and how do I need to respond to whatever is in front of me? Because most of the time even though it feels like it inside, it's not life or death, people. Even though some of the things the way that we're thinking is, oh my God, I'm going to die, or this is going to happen, or nobody's dying and nobody's getting hurt, except us, because we're not paying attention.
Yeah, absolutely. We're not paying attention to us. Yeah, I love that. Yeah. So that just takes me to, because I know, I've had this conversation so many times with my own clients, and it's a really tough one, as you well know, for people to get to, because they're not used to choosing themselves. They're not used to, you called it take responsibility. I call it kicking your own ass, which is the same thing, right? It is taking full responsibility for your experience. So if you don't like a particular experience, you really can change it. It doesn't just happen like that, but you can change it. And what you just described is a really awesome way to begin. So I'm wondering about what you see that might, connect with our listeners about, how stress affects our relationships.
Oh gosh. Do we have time to talk about all of that?
We do. We'll make time.
Stress in relationships. I think a lot of the breakdown or the stress that comes in relationships is because of either lack of communication or not understanding how to communicate. And because we're in that reactionary place, then we may be saying or doing things in the moment that we don't really mean. And so it's literally having to take that step back when you feel yourself getting overwhelmed, or when you feel yourself, when the emotions start getting raised. Sometimes we have to stop and just say, hey, you know what? I can feel myself starting to react. And I know that this is the awareness piece. I know I'm about to say something that may be hurtful, and I don't want to do that. So I'm going to actually take a step back and create a little bit of space. And if that's okay with you, and find my center again, so that I can come back and we can actually have a conversation, but a conversation that's not reactionary, that we're not yelling and screaming at each other.
Right. Right. Because we all end up, when we are in that place of anxiety or whatever it is, we are reacting. When we react with those words, with those feelings, with those thoughts.
I'm feeling threatened, or something that's happening in this moment is helping me or making me feel threatened. And so I'm either going to do two things, right? When survival kicks in, what are you going to do? Fight or run? Right? So you're either going to pull back and not say anything at all and say, oh no, everything's fine, when you know it's not fine, right?
And hold it. Yeah.
And hold it, which isn't helpful. Or you're just going to blurt something out that you didn't really mean, because the only thing that you can do is, I'm hurt. To defend myself, I have to hurt the other person. And as soon as I get into hurt the other person, then I say things I don't mean.
Yeah.
Right? And that's the survival piece inside. It literally comes down to that oldest part of our brain that is primarily survival, that will go, am I fighting or am I running?
Right.
Done. And even though it sounds really simplistic, you can lay that in a lot of interactions, and you can see the place where people are either fighting or running, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I can relate to that. Absolutely. I can relate to it in my own life. Yeah, sure.
We all can.
Yeah. 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 Well, I didn't really want to say that, but I did, Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's really good explanation, because a lot of times I think, especially if you're talking about your, a romantic partnership or your spouse, that we get into habits, we get into patterns, and we maybe we don't even think that we're stressed at home, but that's where it comes out right? We don't feel as though we can express ourselves the way that we really want to. And sometimes I know from my experience, sometimes when we express ourselves without doing that awareness piece that you talked about, it doesn't always come out the way that you want it to. So, and then you take it home, right?
Yeah, well, once the words come out, they're hard to take back.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
you can say you're sorry, but once those words come out, they're hard to take back. And so I look at it like this. There's such a narrow space between what happens and how I react. And the more space that I can create between what's happening and how I respond, the more room I have to make decisions. And it's in that space that I create, because I took that pause, even if the pause is a micro or a millisecond. I take that pause and I go, there's this internal conversation. It goes, "Ooh, James, I don't know if you really want to say that. I don't think you want to go there, because you know what that's going to do." Because the other piece that's happening that we haven't talked about is that we're dealing with patterns of behavior anyway. And so if I'm used to being abused because I came from an abusive relationship, or being abused when I was a child, or if I came from a place where I realized that the only way I was going to survive was to overpower everybody, then that's going to be my strategy. I'm going to go back to the first thing that I remember, or the thing that's the deepest and most embedded inside of my behavior. And that's how I'm going to respond.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So in that moment, the person that I am, that's saying whatever I'm saying, is not even me. It's again, I keep saying this, is that survival person, or survival strategy, or survival personality that I am, that's doing that. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, when we get to that place and we recognize that there is a difference, that how we have been reacting is not really how we would really like to respond.
Or who we are,
Yes, exactly who we are. Then I think there's a whole lot of compassion that has to be, in there to support us to get to that place, so that we are being ourselves, being true to who we are. But that in getting there, so we use that compassion, but we still have to, because I want to, this is a different point, and maybe I need to make sure I'm telling you this clearly, because I think I know you're going to get it. But so that compassion is so important, but sometimes compassion can be interpreted as something that lets us off the hook. So I always like to say, mix compassion with your kicking your own ass strategy, because either way, yes, be compassionate, do make the changes that you need to make, and create the awareness for yourself in a way that is loving.
But don't give yourself away in the process as well.
Right, exactly. Don't give yourself permission to not do what will support you.
Yeah, that's some people call that spiritual bypass, where we override things, right? So that to make good, like make everybody happy. So I will compromise myself in the situation to create peace. And I know that there's a lot of mediators out there, right? There's a lot of people that grew up because they had to mediate what was going on around them. And sometimes mediation is helpful, but if mediation means giving some part of me away to smooth over a situation, that has long-term effects too, because at some point there's going to be resentment that's going to come out, because you're going to realize, or come to a realization, that you've been giving everything away, and not either not getting anything in return, or giving everything away and start getting resentful because you had to make that choice over and over and over again. Right?
And that's not using your voice.
No, it's not using your voice. And then there's the other side of compassion too that I want to talk about as well, because it's realizing that when something's being projected at me, when somebody's emotion is coming at me, one is I have a choice to actually take it on or not take it on. That's really important to understand. But the other part of that is being able to see past whatever that emotion is and look at the person that's behind it and go, wow, I wonder why their reaction is the way they are. I wonder what happened to them today. So there's this place where I
Yeah.
see behind the emotion or the mask or the thing that people put up and go, okay, I hear what they're saying. Why are they saying that? Where did that come from? Right. And so the compassion goes, wow, I wonder what happened in their life, because somebody might be angry when they walk in a house and you don't know that they might have just died in a car accident because somebody cut them off. And so the reaction is that. And so the anger, however the emotion shows up, right?
Yeah.
So the compassion is also being able to see another person where they are and not have to do anything about it except acknowledge that that's who they are and where they are.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah, which is tough if you're not used to being true to yourself. That's really hard. So, but you're absolutely correct. I agree that there are those two. There are both those pieces.
mhm.
It's kind of like that 1+1 makes 3, right? Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
nothing is ever the sum of all of the parts, because there's other things that are involved inside of it,
yeah,
right?
yeah. Exactly. Yeah, yeah. Wow. Okay. So when we get to that place where we're able to sit back and um, and use our own awareness
Mhm.
to help plan for ourselves, give ourselves a strategy, give ourselves a path. What do you think supports that particular work?
Daily introspection is the first thing that comes to my mind when you say that.
Yeah,
We have to create stability in our life to be able to have that stability as we go through our day. And if I jump out of bed and I'm immediately hit the ground running, or I jump out of bed like I used to do for years and years and years, I would open my eyes in the morning, I would take a breath, and then the very first thought in my head was, I'm behind schedule. And so I would start my day in a stressed place because I would be feeling like I needed to rush everywhere. And so that daily introspection, and I just call it a daily practice. How do I set myself and create stable ground or stability for myself? And then I go through my day, because then I'm starting from this place where everything, um, I've created, I guess you could say, calmness. I created some kind of stability. And then I went through my day instead of just jumping and just blasting right into it, because
right.
you just immediately go to the adrenaline and the cortisol, and then it never shuts off. And that's really what the reason for a lot of people's stress is, because we haven't learned how to turn that off yet
Yeah,
anymore. It used to be the way that the system worked was, we all of that would come up when we were in a situation when it was life threatening, and then when it was done, it would shut down, and then we would go back to all, instead of DEFCON 1, we would go back to DEFCON 4, which is kind of like the stand down place where every life is normal. But there's no place inside that we create life is normal for ourselves anymore,
right,
right?
right.
So that daily practice of breath in the morning, of focus, of really going, because does anybody get out of bed going, I want to hit every red light and get cut off by all those, excuse my language, jackasses that are driving, right? I don't look at that in that. I don't plan my day that way. So if I come from a stable place, when those things happen, I have more room to change my approach,
Right.
right?
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about the spiritual strategy part. So if that's where somebody was, and they came to you, how would you kind of bring those two together? Because I'm hearing all kinds of things that are bits and pieces that I think are are really important things to address, and for any of us to understand, so that we can be, strong enough to be able to manage those parts of our lives, the stress and the stress management and the energy management, all that. So please.
Um, it's funny when you ask this question, and I'm surprised at the answer that I'm about to give you. But it's like having to go in and run a diagnostic on your computer, okay? And the diagnostic on your computer that I'm talking about is to go back into the operating system and see if there's corrupted or files that need to be deleted or upgraded. Because one of the pieces about the strategy part is you have to understand how and why the things that are happening in your life are happening, first of all, right? We are running on patterns and behaviors, and until we become more aware of those patterns and behaviors, there's not going to be a way to permanently alter or shift or change any of the things that are happening in our life. Yeah. Right? That's first and foremost. And then that platform of creating stability comes in, because now understanding what the patterns and the behaviors are, and I create awareness and this stable place inside of myself, then I can actually start to see what's actually unfolding in my life. One of the ways that I described that, besides what I just said, was, instead of being the actor in the movie, I'm sitting in the theater watching the movie, because my awareness of my life and the way that it's unfolding, I start to realize, oh, right, this is how we act together. This is how we've always acted together. I'm talking about maybe two friends. And I know that they're going to say this and I'm going to say this, or if this happens, I'm going to react this way. And so it's almost like watching all the players play their parts as I'm also playing my part, and realizing that I can change my part, which is going to change the outcome, which is probably going to change the players that show up in my life, right? Mm-hmm. And so the more, I guess you could say that the strategy comes from awareness of what I'm doing. Scientists have proven that by the time we're in our mid-30s, somewhere between 80 and 90% of what we do on a daily basis is automated responses. And they're talking about everything in our life. And there are places where automation makes sense: eating, speaking, brushing our teeth, driving our car, knowing how to move and walk to the world. Those are all automated. We understand that. But there are things like our behavior and our responses and how we show up in our day that should not be automated. We should be way more aware of what we're doing and what we're actually saying. One of the ways that I do that sometimes when I'm listening to someone and I know that they're not hearing what they say, is I will say back to them what they just said to me, and they'll look at me in awe and go, I didn't say that. I said, yes, you did. Yes, you did. Because the responses are so automated, the reactions are so automated that we're not even aware, and I sometimes I describe to people like this. All of a sudden you're in your driveway and you got home again, but you don't know how you got there. You're sitting in your driveway. And I had that feeling lots of times when I was younger, where I would be in my driveway and I'd go, oh, I'm home. And then there was this place of, wow, I didn't even know how I got here, but I know I'm home.
So you would have been somewhere else.
Because our mind is on so many different things except what's in front of us. So I'm so worried about all the things that are going to happen in my life, right? That I don't see the manhole cover that's off, and I fall into the pit that's right in front of me, because I'm looking out here and I'm looking out here, I'm looking out this way, but I'm not looking here, right in front of me. So the strategy is to become more aware of what I'm doing. The Buddhists say constant mindfulness, and it took me a long time to understand that. But the point is, can I be aware of what I'm thinking and where my mind is going on a moment to moment basis.
Right. Right.
And some people would think that is really hard, but it's not that hard. but
Well,
that but that's where, in some ways, that's where we come in, because we're guides to help people get to that place that they have um, that increased awareness. Let's just put it
yes.
that way,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Yeah. And
You
you
do
know, and
you I'm sorry to be to interrupt, but you do the same thing with the people that you work with, right?
I do. Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure. For sure. And yeah, sometimes it is hard, right? But it's only hard because we're not used to doing it. You know, it's like, you
exactly.
know, oh, it was hard to tie our shoes when we were kids too. You know, it was hard to learn how to cook. Some of us never do learn how to cook, but that's okay.
But you make a good point, right? We're breaking down old habits that we become aware of as we build those new habits, right? And realizing that we're doing both at the same time. It's not one or the other, right? You know, I replace the old habits that are outdated or corrupted files, let's just say, and I create the new habits. And the new habits are the way that I choose and am conscious of wanting to live my life.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I call that making conscious choices. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. Which is, you know, I mean, we have to get to that place. Yeah, it's not, again, it's not something that we just automatically can change in a day.
No,
Um,
nobody, I'm just going to use a really guy term. Nobody ever jumps in a race car and knows how to go 500 miles an hour, at Indianapolis, or 300 miles an hour at Indianapolis. It's a learned thing,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah,
Bicycle riding is the same way, swimming, all of it. A lot of things that we
yeah,
do in our lives, it's
yeah.
learned behavior.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I like to take it back to, you know, when we were born, we didn't come in with this, well, sometime we did come in with that baggage, I suppose, ancestral stuff, but, you know, we didn't come in with the social stuff, you know, or the lived history. Yeah, you know, the bad upbringing, or the boss who, you know, tells you that you're going to lose your job and therefore your income and your livelihood if you don't do, you know, work 80 hours a week, you know, like crazy things like that. But there's something that always comes back to me, and it's something that I was quite surprised to learn myself, because and I have to say for the listeners, so James is like way deeper into the spiritual stuff than me. I just kind of I watch him in awe and think, oh, this is just so cool. um, but for me, when I first started to figure this stuff out and learn about how, you know, how the spiritual piece can be really supportive and useful, and um, just teach us so much more about ourselves than we ever knew. The one piece that was really a surprise to me was learning that really, from a spiritual perspective, all we are expected to do is to be true to ourselves.
to
That's
be
it.
to be true to ourselves and understand what it means to be love.
Mm-hmm.
It's the
Yeah.
other part. It's the other part of that, right?
Yeah.
You know, we didn't come here to be separate, and we didn't come here to live lonely lives. We actually came here because we wanted to be in community and we wanted to be part of something. And so, how do I create that place where I am part of the whole, yet I still maintain my sense of individuality? And it's not arrogance or selfishness or self-centeredness. It's
Mm-mm.
about knowing who I am and how I relate to the world and how the world relates to me, right?
Yes. Yes. And in that process, to be able to get our needs met,
Mm-hmm.
you know, so if we know that something is of the utmost importance to us, then that's what we look for. And I like to be real simple about it and talk about, you know, what makes us feel good and what doesn't feel good, because we sure know it. Sometimes we don't admit it, but we certainly know it.
The thing about it is that your mind may not know what's good and what's not good, but if you really pay attention, you'll find out that your body does.
Yeah.
And part of the awareness is becoming aware of how my body interacts energetically to the things that are happening to me. You know, it's a funny thing when I do workshops sometimes. I will just throw random words out to people and say, okay, I want you to experience what this word feels like in your body, not what your mind thinks it means, but what you actually say. And so we
Mm.
would talk about joy and happiness and ecstasy and satisfaction or safety. And so that's the word. But when people go inside, inevitably there's a disconnect between how they feel and what they understand the word to mean,
Yeah.
right? And
Yep.
it's recognizing that disconnect and going, oh, wait a minute. It, I understand that I'm thinking about happiness right now, but I've never known happiness. And I don't think that I deserve happiness. And that's what's kind of going on, the internal message inside of that, and go, well, wait a minute, let me back up here. Can I shift how I feel about the situation, right? And in the shifting and the changing of that, come into a different relationship with it.
Right. Right. Yeah. Awesome. I love it. Now, were you interested in doing a meditation with us? Did I hear that?
I did, and I actually, when I woke up this morning, my crazy mind said that we were going to start with that, and we didn't, because we went where we were supposed to, which is fine, right? And this is a meditation that I share with people, and it doesn't take a very long time. And at the same time, though, this is something that you can do several times a day. And it has to do with what I was talking about earlier, about hitting the pause button. And it's hitting that pause button and stepping back and using your breath. And I know that you hear about using your breath all the time, but I want to invite you to do it in a slightly different way. And as you focus on your breath, I want to see if you can get really physical. In other words, let go of what your mind is saying and actually pay attention to how it feels inside to breathe, right? And so for everybody here, however you want to look at this, you can stop and you can take a breath in this moment, close your eyes, open your eyes, close, it doesn't really matter, but taking a deep breath in, being very conscious of just letting that breath out and feeling what it feels like in your body. And then finding a rhythm that feels comfortable for you, and then start to focus on inhaling and exhaling. And for me, when I focus on my inhale, it's almost as if my awareness goes right to the tips of my nose or my nostrils. And there's a sense, I laugh and I tell people there's a camera that's sitting there, and I see the air as it moves in me. So I see and feel the air as it moves through me. I feel the air as it expands in my chest. And then I watch as the air moves out of me as I exhale. So my rhythm of that breathing in and that breathing out, consciously aware of the movement of breath as I take a breath in, consciously aware of my exhale. I focus solely on the process of breathing. I let go of everything else that my mind wants to bring in this moment. If a thought comes in, I see it, but there's no judgment, and I just move it to the side, and I make the choice to come back to my breath. And so my breath becomes very physical. I feel my body. I feel the air. I feel my lungs expand. It brings me to a sense of presence. Through my breath, I realize that I am here. I'm sitting in a chair in this moment. I feel my body. I feel the interaction of my body with my breath. I allow the awareness of my breath to take me deeper in. With every breath, I drop deeper into my body. till it feels like I'm sitting right behind my navel. There's a space that feels safe and comfortable, and I breathe down into that point. Whatever it is in my life that I'm ready to let go of in this moment, I consciously let go of when I exhale. I'm breathing in this life-giving energy, and I'm breathing out the things that are not beneficial to my life anymore. It's not that the awareness of the world goes away, it's that I become more aware of myself inside of the world that I'm in. And noticing the calmness that comes from that shifted focus. And that the more you practice, the easier it will be, so that you can actually do this at any time, at any moment, in about 20 or 30 seconds or less. It's not the breath, it's the focus behind it. Right.
I love that.
We rarely pay attention to the physicality of it. In other words, how it affects our body.
And yet, yes, as you were saying, as you focus on it, you feel every little bit of it. Yeah, it's beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. My pleasure and my honor to be able to sit here with you this morning and share.
It's been great. I mean, it's always great to talk to you, but I love your, I like your perspective. I like the work that you do. I think that it's really healing. Yeah, so it's beautiful.
Thank you.
Let me just say too that if you are listeners, if you're drawn to something that James has said today and you want to continue the conversation with him, he's offering a free 30-minute ancient wisdom discovery call. And I would really recommend that you take advantage of that, because you're going to appreciate it for sure. I'm going to put the link, it will be in the show notes. And James said that for the first 10 people who register for the discovery call, he will include a free self-love meditation as well. A short meditation to help you get clear and grounded and feel positive about yourself. So that's awesome. That's a huge gift. So thank you, James, very, very much.
You're welcome. And my hope is that it's something that either I or Dianna said this morning, today, landed for you, and that you are able to incorporate that into your life in some way that helps create change in a positive way.
Yeah. Which gets me into my thanking the listeners and saying what I do after every show, and that is, if you're here and you're listening, you're kicking your own ass. You are, even if it's just a little bit or a little tidbit that you've heard that you can incorporate into your own awareness, then that's a good thing. So thank you for showing up, everybody, and we will see you next time.
Blessings, everyone.
If you like today's podcast, hit subscribe at the bottom on your way out, and come find me at cravemorelife.com for even more DIY ass kicking.